I enjoy the suffering of others as well.
Welcome everyone to episode 15 of Rhythm Encounter, the RPG fan music podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Meyerink, Taylor's on the boards, and sadly, my co-host, Derek Keemsberg and Embryon on the boards, is not with us today. He is off on a globetrotting jaunt, we'll call it, and we wish him the best in his lovely travels as he comes home, hopefully, with souvenirs for me. And to replace, which, well, that sounds kind of sad, but we did replace Derek today with friend of the show, Caitlin Argyros. Hi, Caitlin.
Hello.
And, well, Mike. Hi, Mike.
Hi, I'm Mike. Apparently I'm just Mike now.
Yeah,
I'm no longer a special guest.
Yeah, you've been promoted to just Mike. Oh, that's kind of sad. So we decided to go with a topic that we've heard a lot about today. People have requested this, and we've been sort of plotting it for a while. We have all kinds of ideas. But we're going to go with town themes. We thought that would be fun and get us... it would give me an opportunity to include a track I wanted to include. So the whole thing was based around purely one song that I wanted to have in there. However, before we get to that... Yeah, again. But as always, before we dive into the topic, we get some recent albums to listen to. And the first one is an album I just reviewed quite literally, I think yesterday before we recorded this. And that is the, I think it's pronounced Grinsia soundtrack by Shannon Mason. It was originally a mobile turn-based RPG that was ported to the 3DS and Steam. But on the Steam version, there was a new soundtrack done by Mason, who goes by Pong Ball on her Bandcamp. And it's this sort of Super Nintendo-styled soundtrack that I really, really liked. It had some really strong melodies and a lot of call-outs to, classic Super Nintendo soundtracks. So we're going to go ahead and start with the boss theme, which is the most... it's awesome. But we're going to listen to Boss Battle from Grinsia. As always, I love the bass in that track. It's like comes out super punchy, and I'm straight up just going to crib what I wrote in my review, and that I feel like that track on the soundtrack steals the show. Like, the bass line is so punchy, and I wrote, it feels like it could rattle bones as well as any of the foes it complements. And I agree. I feel like that song is just super, like, brutal. It's got like a battle marchy vibe to it, and it really reminds me of the major boss battle theme from Chrono Trigger. That, like, oh my god, it plays when you fight Dalton. But yeah, I really like that track. The whole soundtrack, like, with those throwback albums, you run the risk of things not having their own identity. And I feel like that album does a really good job of keeping that, where It's taking like sound fonts and styles from lots of other Super Nintendo games, but the strength of the melodies makes the songs stand on their own, and like they feel like they fit in well with amongst that whole canon of Super Nintendo music.
Well, I also really love the way it starts off with the bass there. Very strong and powerful. And then I like how that juxtaposes with the main melody, the lightness and the movement of the main melody. It's that nice sort of contrast between that bump, that pounding, it's moving bass, but then you also have a lighter bit to it.
Yeah, the lower layer sounds really good. I know which part you're talking about, too. Like, I'm not in the mood to emulate sounds tonight. Sorry, guys, but yeah, I got you.
But that's my favorite part of the show is when you make sounds.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe you'll get lucky later tonight. Who knows?
Phrasing?
Ha! Phrasing! Boom!
Are we not doing that anymore?
Seriously, we're not doing phrasing anymore?
Anyway, I like that track too. You know what? It's one of those things you don't. Well, obviously we're way past 16-bit, but it's the best way I can describe it is it's 16-bit epic. It's a very grand sound, but it sounds exactly like what you would hear on the Super Nintendo. I don't know. I haven't heard a song like that in a long time, so it's weird that it's a new song, but it kind of makes you nostalgic.
Yeah, like it's very sweeping. Like I think a lot of like modern music has like build up to epic parts. That's not meant to be a blanket statement, but like generally now that there's this like we have increased audio fidelity and like real instruments and stuff, there's sort of a lot more build up in like terms of the song being a movement. Whereas I feel like a lot of Super Nintendo tracks just boom right get to the melody and the exciting part, and so like they end up feeling more epic per square inch of music. And I definitely feel like that's the case with that one. Like that's why I wrote like it feels like a battle march, like just like some super dramatic fight.
Yeah, that's a good point because I don't know, you only have a certain amount of time to catch someone's attention with music before they might turn away and get a little bored. And why waste that on a build-up when you could just start off, bam?
Yeah, and I would yell at those people, but that's okay because we love all music here. Speaking of loving all music. This next one is an album that came out a couple of years ago, and it came out as a physical 3-disc album. It's The Legend of Zelda Twilight Symphony. It's the orchestral reimagining of the whole Twilight Princess soundtrack, and it never got a digital release due to rights issues with Nintendo, I believe. That's what they wrote on their page, and so like it was Zelda reorchestrated, and they shut down. It was really sad, but Mike reviewed the album with what is probably my favorite extended Adam Carolla metaphor I've ever read on the website. And the track we picked for it is A Door to the Past, which is Mike's favorite on there. And it's great. I just like it because it sounds like a link to the past, because I'm not as familiar with the Twilight Princess soundtrack. But before I babble-on more about that, let's go ahead and take a listen to A Door to the Past from The Legend of Zelda Twilight Symphony. So the first thing I notice about that song, and in listening to the whole Twilight Symphony, is that more, I think, than any other Zelda soundtrack before it, Twilight Princess really needed an orchestra behind it to begin with, because it's just so, and again, I'm going to bring back the word we just used earlier, sweeping. Like, Twilight Princess had that really strong sense of drama that Ocarina of Time, there have been great orchestral arrangements of that soundtrack, but that was a soundtrack design when we didn't have any notion of a game soundtrack having a full orchestra behind it. Like, there had been game soundtracks with orchestras that had done their music, but hardware-wise, it just wasn't something that we expected at that point, so it didn't feel out of place, whereas I feel like as the technology got better and better, with Twilight Princess playing it, I was really struck by, I was like, this music should be done with live instruments because it's clearly written with that in mind. Like, just look at Mario Galaxy versus Mario Galaxy 2. I think Mario Galaxy 1 didn't have an orchestra behind it. But regardless, you can tell the difference. Koji Kondo is such a talented composer, and I think he had help on Twilight Princess. But regardless, that song feels natural in an orchestra. Like, that whole album feels like it could just be the soundtrack to Twilight Princess, and that song in as well. Like, I'm not familiar with the in-game music very much because I haven't beaten that one, but it has this sort of really encompassing feel to the music.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, that's why I described it the way I did in my review, because it definitely sounds like, I hate to say it because like I like the original soundtrack, but it definitely sounds like what they were going for, like what it should have been, kind of.
No, I agree completely. Like, I don't know if it was just tradition or if maybe it was a time thing or it was just not something they considered doing because they hadn't done it that much before, or ever, I think, in Nintendo's case. But, like, playing Twilight Princess was really one of the first major times that I was like, this really should have been done with live instruments. Like, Wind Waker, I think, it doesn't have quite the same, like, realism to it, so I think I was more okay with the soundtrack on that one, although I like the Wind Waker soundtrack best in the series, except maybe for Link Between Worlds. But, I didn't feel like it was missing in that, whereas I really felt like this was filling a gap in, like, the musical coverage of Twilight Princess.
What I wrote was, it feels like it's a movement, like you would have, like, with classical music. There's distinct parts to it, and it kind of moves through them, and I think that Twilight Symphony is a really good title because it does feel like something you might hear at an orchestra, at a symphony.
Oh, yeah. I wish, like, I don't think any of the music in this has been in the Symphony of the Goddess concert. Mike, you've been to that, though, but you could comment on that. But I feel like it would fit well.
Yeah, actually, there is a whole movement on Twilight Princess. Like, the Skyward Scored?
Skyward Score?
Yeah.
That's the name of the soundtrack. You can have it, Nintendo.
Yeah.
Sequel confirmed.
$50 a mention.
But Skyward Sword came with a Symphony CD. Why? I don't think there's an actual full album for the Symphony, and I have no idea why. They just bundled it with Skyward Sword.
Yes,
but one of the tracks is Twilight Princess, and it's probably my favorite on there.
It is really good. We reviewed that album, too. You can find that review on RPGFan.com.
Yeah.
Which seems like a good... What?
I have one more thing.
Yes,
I don't understand, because you're talking about Nintendo and their soundtracks, because it was right around when Twilight Princess came out is when Nintendo like stopped releasing soundtracks to their games, and I don't know why. I guess Fire Emblem Awakening had one, right?
But it wasn't produced by Nintendo at all. It was produced by not Nintendo. I can't remember off the top of my head, but
I don't know what happened, because Wind Waker got one, and then after that they stopped doing it, and then the whole thing happened with Twilight Symphony where you can't get it anymore. So there's really technically two soundtracks that should be out there for this game, and you can't get either one. Because one doesn't exist and one is not available.
Yeah, so Nintendo executives listening to this, stop it! And that's as good a segue as any into our next track, which is from the Child of Light soundtrack by, I'm going to butcher this, Coeur de Pirate. I don't know how to say it, but it's an amazing soundtrack. Easily my favorite part of the game, which I've barely played, so maybe that's not a fair assessment, but the music's amazing, so perfectly worthwhile. And I struggle with a track to pick because Jupiter's Lightning, the battle theme is amazing, but I went with Dark Creatures, and let's listen to it first, and I will tell you why afterwards. So, coming up, we have Dark Creatures from the Child of Light soundtrack. So that's the boss. I think that's the boss theme from Child of Light. It plays in one of the trailers, and I love how dramatic it is. I know that's such a cop-out word because we've said dramatic basically about all three of these songs, but it's just the whole Child of Light score has this like it's cinematic, but not in a Western like go to your Avengers movie cinematic. Although we love Alan Silvestri on this show, all of us, and actually we do all love Alan Silvestri.
We do,
so,
yes.
Yeah, good.
Yes,
all Back to the
course.
Future fans and Avengers fans. So yeah, it has like what I'd imagine from a really good fantasy film for like all audiences. Not like a children's film necessarily, but like I could see this in like, I don't want to say Maleficent because I haven't seen that, but in like a serious but all audiences fantasy film, it has sort of that vibe to it. The whole soundtrack feels that way to me. And even though I really love Jupiter's Lightning, the main battle theme, I just feel like this really captures the sort of drama and like pathos that goes into Child of Light. I use the word pathos. How do you guys feel about it?
Well, I think I have to add Child of Light to the list of games that I knew about but didn't play, but now must play because I've heard music from the game and it's awesome.
Yes.
Which is a surprisingly long list if you think about it. So, but that was, I wrote in all caps epic because I think that's the only word I could comprehend to come up to say about how awesome that music was.
Yeah, I definitely, like I said, the soundtrack it's such a big part of the character of that game because that game is gorgeous. I mean, everything on UbiArt is, but the game has such a strong artistic presence that unless you had some really, really big music, I think it would have gotten lost in the rest of the presentation because you have the writing it's written all in like a poetic meter. I don't remember the term, and visually it's so gorgeous, and so I really feel like that was the appropriate choice with music was to have this sort of really dramatic kick to it. There's a lot of more touching pieces too, like piano stuff, and then the outro, the vocal theme is really great too. So I know Andrew reviewed it for us on the site. I don't think he cared for the vocal theme, but I am on the other side of that fence. So I think that pretty much lets us get ready to start with our topic, does it not?
I think so.
I lied earlier when I said I decided to go with town themes. I let these two decide completely what the topic for today would be, for reasons, I guess. But I did find a great song, so it worked out well. Found a lot of great songs. In fact, we have how many? 12 great songs in this topic. So I think you picked our first track, Caitlin, and I don't think you picked it. I know you picked it because I made the list. So as the guest, you may go first.
Yay! I get to go first. So I picked Land of Flowers from Bravely Default. This is the theme that plays in Florum, I believe.
And it's so good.
Yes, which is a land of flowers, surprisingly enough.
It's so appropriate.
So that's my pick. So Mike, what did you pick?
I don't really know why I picked this one. I mean, I don't know why it originally came to me when we talked about town themes, because Final Fantasy VII is not really my first go-to, but it's the very first track I thought of when I thought of town themes I liked, and it's Ahead on Our Way from Final Fantasy VII.
Which is interesting. Like, it's a Calms theme, right?
Yes.
I picked the third track, and I picked from a series we've never featured on the show, Alundra. I picked The Village of Inoa because it has a guy going, ugh, in the song, which, what more? That's the only criteria for being on Rhythm Encounters. If you have a dude going, ugh, then you're in.
Oh boy, you're going to like my surprise pick.
Oh boy. Yes! So coming up, we've got Land of Flowers from Bravely Default, Ahead on Our Way from FF7, and The Village of Inoa from Alundra.
So I listened to the soundtrack before playing the game, as I'm sure
Me
a
too.
lot of us did. And the first thing I thought when I heard it was this might be a tavern or some sort of bar or, dare I say, casino theme, because it's so lively and playful that I felt it had to be some sort of, tavern or whatnot.
It's a jig of sorts.
Yeah, it's a jig, so it kind of fit a place that you might expect to hear live music or something like that. And then it turns out to be Florum, the Land of Flowers, and I think that works just as well, because the way the main melody, I guess it's a mandolin or some sort of guitar-like instrument, just kind of dances around there. It really evokes that imagery for me of like flower petals dancing in the wind. And I love how it moves. You kind of want to dance with it. Like you expect to see people kind of dancing to it because it just has such great movement to it.
Yeah, I really like, too, a lot of Revo's songs on there. He uses, like, these twinkling chimes, and it has, like, this, it's so distinctive for him. Like, I hear it in so much of his music, and I like that it was brought back in Bravely Default. And we mentioned this on the Music of the Year thing, extravaganza. One of the strengths of that soundtrack is the variety of each track, I think.
Yes.
I think that one loops, but they're very lengthy without a loop. And, like, they have quite a sense of, like, change and progression and movement throughout each song. Like, it's like the opposite of the Super Nintendo music we listened to earlier, the Super Nintendo style music, where that's, like, one melody that you sort of get repeated. Whereas with Bravely Default soundtrack, it's usually very lengthy tracks that have a lot of variety that are not repeated. And I think that's a good example of that.
Yeah, I haven't heard a song from this game yet that I don't like. I haven't heard all of it, like you guys. And, of course, the big, nice collector's edition box for the game is staring at me from my shelf, saying, "Play me," because I have not yet.
Mine's saying that too, but I'm only in Chapter 4.
Well, you're 4 chapters ahead of me.
There you go. And well, you know what? I played too much. I have like 70 hours and I'm in Chapter 4 because I've been grinding so much. So I'm like, I think I'm making this game take longer than it should because I haven't even gotten to the chapter everybody hates.
No, yeah. I haven't either.
Isn't that on top of the 20 hours or something you spent on the demo?
I didn't spend 20 hours in the demo.
Didn't you?
I spent like 15.
Okay.
It was
That's still a lot.
It was. I really liked it. I really liked that game. Just that whole soundtrack is a great thing. I listened to it too before it came out. I reviewed the soundtrack when, like, day one when it came out in Japan, and I was just like shocked at how good it was. Because I mean, I knew Revo. I always have to credit Don, friend of the show, Don Kutowski from Game Music Online, for introducing me to Revo because his music is fantastic and his standalone albums are great too. But Bravely Default is like this great throwback. And then the track you picked, Mike, Ahead on Our Way. What's the name of that song? It's in Final Fantasy IV, but it's da 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 da. Isn't that called Ahead on Our Way?
Oh, like the main Final Fantasy theme?
Yeah, like, it's like the intro theme in 12.
Oh boy, we really should know that, shouldn't we?
Yeah, like I could have sworn it was called Ahead on Our Way. Maybe not though. But regardless, you're gonna hate me for saying this, but that song makes me feel 10 years old, and that makes sense because 7 came out when I was 10 years old. But I just remember it's like so simple and pastoral. It's such a contrast because if I'm not wrong, it plays in Calm, which is the first town you go to after Midgar, and it's like I don't know if this was intentional in the design process of that game, but the scale and the contrast, I couldn't have articulated like this as a kid, but this is how it makes me feel retroactively. Is like you go from Midgar, which feels like it could be the entire game. Midgar is gigantic. You're in there for 10 hours or however long you're there, and it feels like the whole world. And then you realize, no, the world is huge, and Midgar is this tiny slice of it. But compared to Midgar, you go to Calm, and it's like 3 screens plus buildings. And it's just such a change, and I feel like this song really captures the difference. Midgar is all this synthetic and like clanging metal noise, and this town theme is just it's
calming.
There you go. And I remember the visuals of that game so well. Like that game, man, that was my first Final Fantasy, and just it's such a like I played RPGs before Final Fantasy VII, but like that was the first one I played that was like the scale was just through the roof.
Yeah, I love this song also, like you, Stephen, because of where it plays, because of what happens when you leave Midgar. There's a lot of drama, a lot of, bad stuff happening. And then you get here right before, the flashbacks happen, and it's a nice sort of palate cleanser, I guess, to have before you start moving on with the story. And I love, it's nice and sedate. I mean, this is this is peaceful, the theme song. That's what it feels like to me.
It's very peaceful compared to the fact that you're going to walk outside and see a giant snake impaled on a sword or a stake.
That imagery.
Sephiroth is such a drama queen.
He really is. Yeah, I like that song. And I wasn't going to do this because I tend to do it a lot, I think, on the show, is where I come on and I say how I was debating between two different versions of a song. And I gave you this one, so if you want to hear the other one, go somewhere else.
What was the one you were going to play?
Well, there's the piano collections for Final Fantasy VII as well, which is a great track, but it's missing I was going to say flute. Caitlin used woodwinds, which is a much better word. I think that's...
Woodwinds.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's what makes the song, but without it there, I don't know, I actually like this version better, which is surprising, because usually I would probably go for the piano version for a lot of songs.
You know, a lot of the music from 7 I actually don't prefer in piano, generally. I really like... I think a lot of people might identify with me on this, is that the sound palette that 7 has, like those drums, and just like... It's so distinctive for me that it's sort of tied into how much I like that song. Rob mentioned this a lot when he plays Final Fantasy VII music every time he comes on. And, I agree with that, although I don't think this track is covered on it. But the Melancholy Tribute to Final Fantasy VII by TPR, that's some really fantastic arrangements of 7 music in a piano style. And it's weird, because I feel like a piano should capture this song pretty well, because it's so simple. But I don't know, for some reason... The Piano Collections version just doesn't do it for me. So I'm glad you went with this one. And speaking of things I'm glad about, The Village of Inoa. Alundra is amazing. It's one of those games, I've been playing it lately, and it's aged super well. I think. It still looks great, plays great. It's from an earlier era in games, but I had never played a Zelda, and this was the first style of that game I had played, so... I love Alundra, and this song it's so diverse and interesting. It's like a xylophone, and that dude, I don't know. I always remember that, because you're jumping around. I remember jumping around and trying to time my jumps to the dude's voice. And then there's that salt shaker type instrument that sounds like you're shaking salt. Boy, I was in trouble 2 words into that sentence. But it's got such a diverse flavor. I really like it. What do you guys think? Because I don't know if you've played Alundra. I think you have, Mike, and I know you said you haven't, Caitlin.
I have not, and I have a question.
I have an answer.
Why is there a guy fine?
Why not?
It's just a random guy that just us.
I don't understand the question.
I don't either.
Well, it just sounds like, are there people working in this,
No.
working in the fields or whatnot? I don't know. When I hear people in a music track, I kind of expect it because of there's got to be guys or people working. But
some lumberjacks, maybe?
And lumberjacks. Well, no, most of them are just complaining about how terrible their lives are as they pray to a false god and die in their dreams. But so
that's a reason to I think.
Yeah, and this little elf-looking dude is running around with a bunch of European people. So, in
all seriousness, I like the use of the electric piano. Instead of trying to have a real piano sound, it gives kind of a jazzy feel to it that I really liked.
Yeah, I agree.
Huh.
So. For all my love of Alundra, Mike, the next track that you picked, I adore this soundtrack and this series. Not this game in particular. In fact, I mentioned this game on the latest Random Encounter. But what did you pick, Mike?
The Adelheid? Castletown from Wild Arms Alter Code F, because I like it.
There are lots of reasons to like that song, and we had a reader write in with a question to Random Encounter where it was what game would you take that's a B or a C grade game that one small change or one change would make it an A? And I said Alter Code F if they gutted the Wild Arms 3 combat system from it, because the music is amazing. And I picked our second track, which is the town theme from Shining Force 2, another game we've never featured, one of the formative RPG experiences in my life. This one's... A lot of people mistakenly assume that this is Motoi Sakuraba because he did Shining Force 3, but this is actually Motoake Takenouchi, and I couldn't tell you what else he's done. But, it's the town theme that plays in most of the major cities. I always called it the Grand Seal song, but I don't necessarily think that's the only place it plays. But so getting a little Shining Force 2 up in here, childhood style. And then, Caitlin, our third track was picked by you, and another game that I adore.
As well you should. Everyone should adore it.
Correct.
This is Valua City from Skies of Arcadia. This is the thing that plays in like the lower down and out poor section of Valua before you get to the ritzy, rich, nice part of the city.
The underneath the rotting pizza portion of the city, if we want to use a Barrett term from FF7.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's listen before we talk to Adelheid Castletown, town theme from Shining Force 2, and Valua City. that's another game that just makes me feel like a kid, man. Like, I played Wild Arms 1, I think after Final Fantasy VII. Because I remember I thought it tickled me to death that my box, I still have it, says, this'll hold you over till FF7. And I was like, I already beat FF7, shut up. And but in this case, this is the Alter Code F version. But I didn't like Alter Code F as much. I just feel like the Wild Arms 3 battle system is one of the weaker ones in the series because it can be really tedious. And there isn't, I feel like there isn't a great sense of progression for your characters. And I feel like it was exacerbated in Alter Code F. That said, the graphics and visuals, and most importantly, the soundtrack are amazing in Alter Code F. It's so solemn and there's like banjo in it. There's flute. The bass is great. It's such a great cover of that song, and it has that frontier sound like that reminds me of like some of the westerns I've watched, like just like the banjo, and it's like this. It's the strength of Wild Arms is that it's this fusion of like a JRPG style of music with that frontiersy, sometimes Ennio Morricone vibe of westerny music, and this is such a great example of that. And it has so much heart to it too. Like I think of Adelheid like running around doing the charge attack, or rather the charge run and smashing into walls.
Boom. Yes.
And the parrots. Sorry, memory birds.
They were parrots.
They were parrots.
But they were scarlet macaws. They were pink or red, right?
Yeah, they were pretty parody.
Okay.
Caitlin's like, yeah, I agree with all of that.
I was just laughing at that pun. It was a good pun. I love the opening was really beautiful, and I thought it was going to go in that direction, and then it just sort of switches to this, kind of, it's got a nice beat with the banjo. I love the banjo. That was an awesome banjo.
Yeah. The banjo, too, sort of gives it that forlorn sound, and I think that's an important thing to mention with any Wild Arms soundtrack, is that every one of those games has a world that's sort of dying, and I think that really captures the sort of... It's still hopeful and sort of upbeat, but it's very solemn and sort of like this, like things are winding down. I mentioned this when we did our summer episode, where it's like it feels like end of summer or end of an age, and this definitely captures that sort of solemnity.
I agree. Ooh, another good word for you.
So my track is another one. All of these today make me feel like a kid, but this one in particular because I played it. Oh God, I don't even remember. I had to be like 6 when I played this game, if less. I don't even remember how old I was, but I remember playing Shining Force 2 on Sega Channel and like trying to beat it at my uncle's apartment, and like I kept losing my save file because Sega Channel wipes the data constantly. And so when I finally owned Shining Force 2, it felt like it took me years and years to beat it. It probably wasn't that long, but I love this song. It's so bubbly and sort of upbeat, and I remember I would leave the game on because I liked this song so much, and like be on the floor of my bedroom writing stories on a yellow legal pad, and like I would like every character would be like an original character who was just a character from Shining Force 2, and like I think of like playing. For some reason, this reminds me too of playing the Game Gear version, sort of Heija, and like sitting outside of places where my mom got her nails done or like shopped at Fashion Bug, and me just sitting outside playing Game Gear or later the Nomad and actually playing this game. And this is Shining Force all over for me. Like I probably remember this song better than any other one. And it also reminds me too how in town in Shining Force 2, when you have a whole group of people, they're all sort of marching in place while they're walking. That always amused me.
Well, they're getting their exercise.
Yeah, well, they got to stay in shape for the upcoming battle.
Yeah. How did you play an RPG on your Nomad while you were out? Did you just travel with a backpack full of AA batteries?
Probably, yeah, actually.
Yeah, okay. It took 6, right?
Yeah, it and the Game Gear took 6. Gosh. But you know what? Those things were cool, man. They were, like, big and heavy, and, you got, like, 2 hours of battery life on them. But you know what? 2 hours was all I needed sometimes, because Fashion Bug is boring. I mean, for me, Fashion Bug is boring. I don't know.
Is that a St. Louis thing?
No. Yes. Well, not exclusively.
Well, this was in Massachusetts, so I think it can't be exclusively.
Well, for me,
exists in St. Louis.
It's all over there for me.
Here be dragons for you Californians.
Yes.
So I liked that you used the word bubbly, Stephen, because that's exactly what I was thinking about this. It's such a very happy-sounding song, and I've never played the game, but I can sort of imagine, just from hearing this, what it, at least what it feels like to be going through this town based on that song. And I like that when I can sort of get an image in my head from music about what it looks like, having never seen it.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to think about it, too, because, like, this is the first time you hear this song is before everything starts getting real bad and horrible and evil. So, like, it is sort of this, like, totally blissful, no darkness at all involved track. On the opposite end of that whole no darkness involved thing, Mike, that picture you sent me is amazing. What is this?
Did I send you a picture? Oh, I was searching for Shining Force 2 because I wanted to see the lightsaber. I guess someone did artwork of a battle scene.
Oh, that's really cool. But if we're going to talk about other games that I adore, we already know, everyone who listens to this regularly knows I love Skies of Arcadia. It was in our first episode. Caitlin, Valua City is a great pick because it, contrasts well with the previous track. But it's just, this is another track that is like very, well, I don't want to steal your thunder, so you go first.
Okay, of course. So, I think I mentioned this before, but... Or no, I didn't. I'm sorry. What I love about this piece is how you can sort of... there's a lot of despair in the piece, which is fitting because it's a really rundown, poor section where people are suffering. They don't really have a lot of hope left. So it's fitting that you can sort of hear that in the piece. But then there are parts of it where it kind of turns a little bit more positive, and you can almost hear a bit of hope mixed in, which is also really fitting because of what you and the party do when you get to Valua and what you're doing, trying to give people hope.
Like the way I wrote it down, and I sort of view it as like it's like this dark, cloudy place with the occasional tinges of light to it.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know if it's the synths that were used. I don't know if it was intentional or if it was just a factor of limitations of the hardware. But there's a kind of grungy feel to the music. It's not very. It's got a dirty, a little bit distorted, which also I think really fits in well with the imagery when you're running through that part of town.
Yeah, like I joked earlier, this is the underneath the rotting pizza half of Valua, and
yes.
like it definitely gives me a similar vibe to Midgar, where it's like this dirty, downtrodden place that isn't quite snuffed out, but it's not happy.
No, it's not. But it makes me happy when I listen to it. I mean, that sounds weird, but I enjoy listening to it.
I enjoy the suffering of others as well.
Around 135, too, the drum synth reminds me so much of Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne. It's like this sort of distorted drum synth. And then I would say, towards the end of the track entirely, it really reminds me of Kingdom Hearts. And it's got this like melody where it's like doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo, like this weird synthy sound in the background, but there's a lot I love about the Skies of Arcadia soundtrack that sort of channels a lot of the other RPGs I like. And, like, I think a lot of the Skies of Arcadia team was actually a lot of the original quadrilogy of Phantasy Star Games teams. I think it was the same director, too. Reiko Kodama or something. But, gosh. Valua City just reminds me of how much I like about Skies of Arcadia. It's just it's this, like, classic, timeless tale. Yeah, I love it.
Me too, even if I didn't play it until the GameCube.
So you're saying you played the version with the atrocious music?
Yeah, but see, I only played that one, so I didn't realize it was atrocious at the time. So I probably should compare and see what I was missing.
Yeah, you should. I would agree.
I agree, too.
We're going to move on to the next block. This is a track that I've wanted to feature on the show forever, and this seemed like the best time ever to play it. And it's from a game that I actually kind of hate. Actually, I really hate it. I watched my two roommates from a couple of years back. Both of them beat this game. And just being like, this is the Xbox version that was like technically completely broken, like enemies would disappear in the middle of combat. But it's The Last Remnant, which conceptually I like everything about it, but in execution it feels like a really weird Unreal Engine fan game. But the track I picked, it's by Tsuyoshi Sekito, and it's called Old Traditions, New Methods. And I remember my roommate was playing the game, and I sort of like, God, I really feel like we've played this on the show before. I feel like I've said this before. Maybe not. If I have, let me know, listener. I apologize, but I'm playing it again. But so my roommate was playing the game, and he got to this town where it plays, and I was immediately like, what town is that? Where are you? I need to know. And like he's like, oh, this is the town. So I'm on like Google, like typing in the name of the town. I'm like, song, and I couldn't find it because it's called Old Traditions, New Methods, not the name of the town. But it's awesome. So that's mine, and then Caitlin, you picked our next one from a game I love very much.
Yes, I picked A Moment's Rest from Final Fantasy XII. This plays a couple places, but as a town theme, it plays, you might sense a theme here, in the lower part of Arcades. Again, the poor, down-and-out part of Arcades.
You like downtrodden cities? Are you like a fan of those?
Maybe subconsciously. It's not something I intentionally I want to go to the poor part of town or whatnot. It's just sometimes they happen to have better music or awesome music in general. So
it'd be cool if towns in real life had music.
Yes. What kind of music would our town have, though?
Well, it all depends on which part of town you're in. Are we in the poor part of town or are we in the nice part of town? That would make a big difference. We're in St. Louis, so that would make a big difference.
Yes. And then, Mike, I think you picked the next track.
I picked the track because Steven wouldn't.
I wanted to, but couldn't.
Well, it was very admirable because Steven, you might know, likes Final Fantasy IX a lot.
I do.
And for the same reasons, I didn't pick any track from Chrono Trigger or Final Fantasy VI because if I didn't keep myself in check, I would always pick tracks from those games.
Yeah, we can't go back to the well that often. I mean, it's been one episode, I think, since we had a Chrono Cross song, so I mean, I'm already starting to get the itch, but yeah.
Yeah, so Steven told me ahead of time that he was debating between certain tracks, but he wasn't going to go with 9 because he likes 9 a lot, and he's trying not to overplay it.
It would have been Black Mage Village.
Yes. So I picked a track from Final Fantasy IX for him. And I picked the Kingdom of Bermesia, which is Freya's village, as I recall. Or town, or right?
Well, it's her bombed-out husk, but yes.
Same thing.
Thanks, Kuja. Freaking jerk. Anyways, before I get angry at Kuja for being a total tool, let's go ahead and take a listen to Old Traditions, New Methods, A Moment's Rest, and Kingdom of Bermesia. So I don't know anything about the town this appears in the Last Remnant other than what it looks like, and that there's a guy in your party that looks like Zidane, or not Zidane, Titus, but not. But this song is fantastic. That whole soundtrack is really great. Like, there's just a lot of variety to it. You know, the battle themes in particular are especially excellent, which is good because you spend a lot of that game in battle. But this track, I love that like plucky acoustic guitar in the background, and like there's like these like this distortion. It's like wee wah, like, and like just there's woodwinds, and there's like the drums are like this hollow bongo type thing, and it's such an eclectic mix, but it has such optimism to it. I really like it, and I like the title of the song a lot because it's got a comma in it, which is unusual. But old traditions, new methods. Like I vaguely recall part of the plot of this point of the game, or the city, I guess. And I don't know if this is a correct assessment, but like I like the idea. It's like it's a city with like history, and like we've been doing things a long time, but now we get this new way of doing it that's still in keeping with the way things were. I don't know. It's a weird abstraction of it, but that's the vibe I sort of in my head can convince myself that I have, and I really like it. But you guys don't know anything about this song. What did you think?
I also really liked like you said, the eclectic mix of everything in here. I loved how the strings at the beginning, when it's just the strings and the percussion, and then the guitar comes in and the beats picks up, and it's just a really cool sound. And then I guess when it's getting close to where it loops back, and it's again just the beat and the percussion, and you start slowly adding instruments back in to get to the main theme. That was really cool. I like that part a lot.
It's actually not what I expected, because I'll admit that I do not know much about that game at all. I'm actually looking at images of the game right now to make sure it does look the way I thought it did, because in my head I was picturing kind of a sort of Final Fantasy 12-ish, because it's like kind of realistic, and there's a lot of browns. There's definitely a lot of browns. Not in a bad way, but it's
not in a very good way either.
The song's a lot more upbeat than I expected from that game. Like, just visually looking at it, it looks like it's a very serious game, unless it's not. But it certainly looks that way.
I think it had a pretty significant degree of drama to it.
Yeah, no, but I like it. It's got a really nice. Did anyone say it has a nice flow to it? Because that's what I'm going to say.
Well, you could say nice flow. It's okay. We haven't co-opted that one yet. Johnny Young Bosch voices the main character too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, good song. All new to me. I have no idea what the rest of the soundtrack is like.
Well, I know what the rest of the soundtrack to Caitlin's soundtrack is like. Caitlin's meaning Final Fantasy 12, meaning A Moment's Rest.
Because it's awesome.
Because awesome, yeah.
Yes.
As our very first guest, Casey Orman, would totally point out, also the composer or the arranger of Final Fantasy 12 piano collections, that soundtrack is amazing.
Yes, it is. And this is one of my favorite understated, quiet pieces on the track. There's a lot of, obviously bombastic, great music, but this piece it starts off so simple, building with more and more instrumentation as you get through. It's a very melancholy sound to it, which really fits when you get to that lower part of Arcades. It's not the first place it plays in the game, but it really suits the atmosphere that you feel in that part of the city. And I guess my favorite part is towards the middle, where the strings take over and it's just strings, I think, with the harp in the background, and there's a bit of a crescendo happening, and the melody starts sort of lifting up as things are fading away to go to the loop. It gives me feels. I get feels from that part.
Yeah, I agree completely. That part, I wrote down the time code on it because it's such a great finale to the song. It captures Arcades really well for me. I agree. Like, I know it plays in a couple places, and I think it's also in Revenant Wings. Yeah, you kind of said everything I could say about that track. 12 has such an underrated score, I think.
Yeah.
Like, I think people, like, again, I know you like 12, Caitlin, and I like it a lot. It's my greatest disappointment, but it's still a great game to me. But the soundtrack, I think, is overlooked because of how people feel about the game a little too much.
I would definitely agree with that.
I would too, yes.
And then, so I messed up. Mike picked the soundtrack version of Kingdom of Bermesia, but I derped and accidentally gave them TPR's A Melancholy Tribute to Final Fantasy IX version. And they decided they liked it so much that we were just going to go with that, which makes me happy because I mentioned TPR and Melancholy tribute albums earlier, and because that song is amazing on that album.
Oh, it really is. Yeah, there's a lot of melancholy songs in this show. I don't think it was intentional, but I think this version of it really captures that sense of, how'd you describe the town? Burned out husk?
A bombed out husk?
Bombed out.
Because you show up and you're hiding behind statues and it's raining. Actually, you know what? That makes me want to go on a tangent about how amazing Final Fantasy IX is, which I won't do. But that is really one of the strengths of that part of the game, because this is before you've met Kuja and he's sort of devolved into his Final Fantasy villain tropes, which, again, I still like Final Fantasy and their villains and tropes and stuff, but that sequence is so cinematic in such a way that, like, you couldn't have in earlier Final Fantasies. Like, you're standing behind the statues, hiding from Queen Brane and from Beatrix, and you're like, who is that guy, Kuja? And, like, it's such a mysterious sense you get from him, and this song is playing, and it's raining, and it's like this dark color palette. It's so good, and that's why I love this melancholy version, because it sort of captures Freya's being horrified that, her kingdom has been destroyed. It's one of those things. Sorry to cut you off. I know you were starting to talk. Kefka gets a lot of credit for being one of the only Final Fantasy villains that actually does anything, and I would disagree wholeheartedly. Kuja blows up a planet. Kuja destroys someone's entire village, so, like, people like, Kefka is the only one who does anything. And I'm like, well, yeah, except for all of the horrible things Kuja does, like destroying the universe.
I've never heard this version before, and now I have to listen to everything from the Melancholy version. I loved how I think the original version had, like, organs as the main sort of theme, and I liked having sort of the piano in here instead. Kind of, it makes it feel more personal and somber. And given, what you mentioned, what's going on, what happens in Burmecia, that really, I thought was really fitting. I love the theme in general and how it's a variation of Freya's theme, which makes a lot of sense since for a good chunk of the game, she's kind of like your window to Burmecia and Burmecian culture, and
she really identifies with her kingdom too. Like, she's very loyal, and so to have her theme be an offshoot of her nation's theme, if you want to look at it in that direction, yeah. I really like that idea.
Yes, and this version, I like how it's subtle, and like I said, more personal than the original. The original is great too, but I like that this more personal take on that music.
Yeah.
I like that. Personal. That's a good way to describe it.
Yeah, because the original had, like, it was like organy, but it sounded like almost somebody was, like, chanting, like a choir. So I love the contrast in this version, because it's already a melancholy song, but this version, again, I'll go with Mike and agree with you on this. It feels more personal. But I'm glad we decided to keep that version. I approve. Like I said earlier, the Melancholy Final Fantasy IX is my favorite Final Fantasy IX arrangement album by a huge margin.
Well, I'm glad we accidentally listened to it.
Yes, it was a happy accident.
Speaking of happy accidents, thank you for the segue. Divinity Original Sin. It is a classic turn-based computer RPG-style game with some really great modern flourishes. We talked about it to death on Random Encounter, so I don't want to overlap here too much, and you guys know how much I like it. I've been playing it a lot lately. And one of the things that stands out about this game is, A, that it has a massive soundtrack, but a tiny soundtrack release, is the fantastic music in it. This isn't just like, I like the game a lot, and the music's pretty good. This is like, I am playing and I am constantly assailed by feelings of how good the music is in this game. And there are tons of town themes, tons of battle themes. Like, I've only been in one main city in the story so far, and I've heard no less than it has to be like 6 or 7 town themes, and they're all awesome. This is one of my favorites, though, because it starts out, it has a really cool sound to it, and then it sort of goes bananas. So I don't want to overtalk it yet. It's just from the game. It's not on the actual soundtrack release, so I'm just going to call it Town Theme. And Mike, you picked the second track?
Yeah, it was. I don't really know why I stumbled across this one, but I'm glad I did, because I haven't thought about this game in a really long time. But I picked The White Cloud in the Sky, the town. Was there only one town? the town theme in Brave Fencer Musashi.
Yay! I don't think we feature that game, so thank you.
I don't think we have, but there's a few tracks in that game that I just adore, and this is one of them.
I would agree.
Well, after that, we have Caitlin's pick, which is technically our last pick of the show.
I picked Agnirtha, Imperial Capital. This is from Xenoblade, or Xenoblade Chronicles, which is the last city that you get to in the game. And for reasons that I cannot quite explain for want of spoilers, it's a really awesome part of the game.
Cool. Well, then let's go ahead and start our final block with the random town theme from Divinity Original Sin, the White Cloud in the Sky from Brave Fencer Musashi, and Agnirtha, Imperial Capital from Xenoblade Chronicles. So, the Divinity Original Sin came out of nowhere for me. I have not liked a single one of the other Divinity games. Not to say they're not good, but they've not really been my jive. Plus, Divine Divinity has a goofy name. But it just came out of nowhere, and there's so much heart in this game. It's kickstarted, and like there's a couple of articles on like Gamasutra and stuff that talk about like how much the developers wanted to make this game, and I get that impression out of the music so much. There's just the guitar just feels really heartfelt. That little high note in the main melody pluck, that do part just gets me every time. And then like some odd a minute in when it just goes nuts and just all kinds of different crazy stuff gets thrown in there. I just adore that song. It's so, yeah, it's great. Like it's in a game that is already fantastic. It really is one of those things that just elevates it to a level beyond how good it already is.
I got a real Renaissance vibe from this piece. It sounded like what you might expect to hear, like if you're at a fair or doing a magical or something like that. It had that kind of feel. And then there's this part, like a minute in, where it's either they're distorting or it's just a lot of stuff going on at the same time that creates that kind of distorted, echoey sound. And that was I wasn't expecting that at all. And that was a really cool part of the song for me.
Yeah, I was thoroughly impressed by that, actually. I knew nothing about the other games in the series, except that I don't think a whole lot of people like them. So I'm happy that this one's apparently better. But
yeah.
If the other music is anywhere near this, which I guess I should find out, I'm going to listen more because that was some good stuff.
Yeah, I'm actually reviewing the soundtrack release, which is only 22 tracks, which is a shame because, again, the game has over 150-odd tracks in it that are all just, like, it's so good. Like, it's shocking the quantity and quality of it. And, yeah, like, I feel the same way. Like, I'm almost sort of speechless just because playing it, I've been playing it with my friend. We've been playing the whole thing co-op. And, like, so many times we'll just be playing, and I'm like, oh, that song's awesome. Oh, this song's awesome. And, like, he's not a music guy, but he notices, like, even when we're fighting, he goes, this song is awesome. And I'm like, I know, right? So it's, if you did not know anything about this game, you got to give it a shot. If you didn't play classic computer RPGs because you were intimidated by them, this one's got a lot to it, but it's a little more welcoming than normal. Rob would disagree with you, but, you know, that's Rob. He's Rob. And he's not here, so I can say that unchallenged. But
I'll challenge you.
No, you won't. You won't. But yeah, great stuff. And again, like I was saying earlier, the game, easily one of the contenders for my game of the year now, like handily, and it came out of nowhere. So check out Divinity Original Sin and the soundtrack. And speaking of a game that's great, but not at all recent, Brave Fencer Musashi. I love that song. Classic PS1 all the way, man.
Yeah, it's really... Which one? I know we use bubbly for something, but I don't care. I'm going to say it again.
It's bubbly.
I guess the whole game kind of is, though. But that's kind of what's so charming about it.
It actually reminds me of... God, Sekito did some of the Rise of Mana music, and it really reminds me of what I heard there. So it's funny that he sort of carries that style forward.
It's also interesting to compare it to the other piece we had by him, Old Traditions. I could hear the similarities, like in the mix of instrumentation, but it still felt really different, which is fitting because it's Brave Fencer Musashi is a very different game from what I've been able to glean from Last Remnant.
Oh, yeah.
I love that you picked this, Mike, because this is one of my favorite happy accidents of all time. I bought this game because it came with a demo. I think it was for Final Fantasy VIII.
Yep.
And that was the main reason why I bought it, because I had to play that demo. And then I loved the game, and I adore the soundtrack. So I'm applauding you, but you can't hear it for picking that track.
Can we call that Zone of the Enders syndrome?
I was thinking
yes.
that too, yeah.
Like when you buy a game because you want the demo and then you end up liking the game too. And then the last track, you know, I've been joking that Xenoblade is becoming our new Chrono Cross, and I'm going to have to institute some sort of rule because I'm not allowed to play Chrono Cross nonstop. So I think I'm going to start limiting Xenoblade to one entry per person per episode. But that song is fantastic. Like well worth having multiple Xenoblade entries in several episodes. Just the piano is great. When the violin kicks in, this is one of the Ace Plus tracks. It's not one of Shimomura's, but that violin sounds like Shimomura's violin. It catches a sort of melancholy. I haven't been to this part of the game, so I don't know what the deal is, but there's this sort of melancholy, sad, but it's regal, but sad, and then just when it busts into that piano part near the end, it's like a solo piano section, just fantastic.
Yes. This is another soundtrack where I listened to the music before playing the game, and I got this image in my head from this track about what I might expect. I was thinking, it sounded like it might be someplace mystical. I was thinking really pretty, beautiful buildings, whatnot like that. And I won't go into details for sake of spoilers, but it was really different from what I had imagined in my head, but in a good way. I think you learn things about what happened to Ignaritha when you get there in the game, and it makes the melancholiness that you mentioned, Stephen, all the more powerful and haunting, knowing what happened there. And then, of course, the track itself is beautiful. If I'd never played the game, for shame, which I know it's a horrible thing to say, but if I'd never played the game, I still would love this track.
I've played it.
Arguably more than I have.
Yeah, but only a little bit.
For now. I'm going to go play right after.
Oh, okay, you're going to win then.
Good man. But yeah, everything you mentioned about the strings and the piano is just the main theme that plays throughout is just so beautiful, and it's simple. Again, I tend to go for these simple themes, but
you talk about the piano part, that do 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 do.
Yes, yes, and then I love the part where the piano is bump 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 bump, and the strings are just soaring. Every part of that piece, I can't get enough of it.
It is solidly delicious.
Yeah, it's interesting that you described that town vaguely, which I appreciate, the way you did, because it made me think of another track that I won't mention from another game that I won't mention, that I'm going to get on the show one day.
What?
I guess I could have done it on this episode, but I forgot. One of these days I'll get it in there, but that is part of the reason I like it, because it reminds me a lot of a certain Final Fantasy 13 track. I just broke my rule, didn't I?
Oh, I know what track it is.
Yeah.
Me too.
But listeners don't, so you're going to have to keep listening forever until Mike plays it.
Actually, just keep listening forever, period.
Oh, yes. Please do that. I agree.
Yeah. Great track. Yeah, I don't even know how far into the game I am. I want to say around 20 hours, but I don't know what that means.
Yeah, to me that doesn't mean anything, because I take forever to do anything and everything.
Yeah, me too. So I don't know. I have a long way to go before I hear that song. But yes. I still know the soundtrack, and it's a great soundtrack.
Absolutely. So that seems as good a spot as any to wrap us up. I will say, I promised I would do this. I would have had Memories of the City from Persona 3 in here, but I wanted to play something different. But, listener, do me a favor when you're done with this podcast and go listen to Memories of the City from Persona 3, because it's amazing.
Okay. I'm speaking for the listener. They're saying okay right now.
You are the listener surrogate, the listener proxy here. So, thank you, listener. So, yeah, that wraps us up for today. Again, everybody, thanks for listening. Mike and Caitlin, thanks for being here today. As always, we welcome your suggestions, ideas for topics, things you'd like to hear, ways we can improve, all that good stuff. Hit us up on our fresh and new music@rpgfan.com email address. That's nice and easy to remember. It's MUSIC@rpgfan.com. Let us know if you want to hear certain music, if you have ideas for topics. We really like to interact with you guys, so that's great. And, of course, also hit us up on iTunes, review us, talk about how great we are. As always, I joke about don't leave a review unless you have something nice to say. And honestly, I think I would stick with that. Don't review us unless you have something nice to say. Or you can lie to yourself. I don't mind if you break with your integrity to give us 5 stars. I'm okay with that. Of course, if you've been listening this far, you probably are okay with it. But regardless, tell people, like I haven't said this in a couple episodes, but big part of the show, we want to get people listening to game music that wouldn't have listened to it before. Like, I've had a lot of conversations since we started with people who don't know anything about game music, and it can be hard to broach the subject sometimes. Be like, someone's like, oh, what's this? Oh, it's game music, and you sort of sometimes get that, like, from someone that doesn't know about it. You get that sort of, oh, okay, reaction. Educate people like that, explain to them why we like it so much. I had a conversation with a new person at work the other day who she doesn't know anything about game music, but she was so interested, and we listened to some, and she was shocked at how good it was. So get people listening, and you don't necessarily have to make them listen to us, but I like to think we make it approachable. So if you want to try to introduce people to it, because I feel like that is an awesome thing to do, because we all love it, and the more people listening to it, we spread the love. That's my spiel for the end of the day. Caitlin, you picked a guest track. Hit me, and Mike. But don't physically hit us.
You can physically hit me.
Please don't physically hit me. I bruise easily.
Okay.
I won't hit anyone, but I might hit you with awesome and feels with this pick. So I could not go without picking something from Xenogears, because it is still ultimately my favorite RPG of all time. So I chose Thames, Spirit of the Men of the Sea.
Men of the Sea!
Yes, which is, I love this because it's not what you expect from a town theme, and it's fitting because the Thames is not what you expect from a town. It's this big ship or rig in the middle of the ocean that's captained by a giant walrus person. And
he's a man of the sea!
And he does those dramatic men of the sea poses. And he has an anthropomorphic dolphin for like a helmsman or whatnot.
I haven't played Xenogears in years, and I don't remember it very well, but I remember Men of the Sea, so that must say something about him and this song.
Yes, something good. It sticks in your head.
Yeah.
And it starts off, it sounds like a work track. You've got guys shouting. There's that I mentioned earlier in this. And then it kind of gets a little playful because, again, like I said, anthropomorphic dolphin, walrus for a captain, men of the sea. And then it gets kind of, serious, dramatic, kind of, we got things to do, let's do them at the end, which is my favorite part. But yeah, I love this track, I love this game, so I had to pick it.
Good choice.
Yeah, fantastic. I'm always a big fan of getting some Mitsuda, and particularly Xenogears on there. I skew more towards the Chrono Cross side of things, but Xenogears is probably one of his other best works, I would say, in my opinion. So I am happy to have this on here. So everybody, Caitlin, Mike, thanks for listening. Listeners, taking us out is Thames, the Spirit of a Man in the Sea from Xenogears.
Why is there a guy fine?
Why not?